The fluorescent lights of the grocery store buzzed overhead like trapped insects, casting a sickly yellow glow over everything they touched. I stood frozen at the register, my fingers trembling as I held the rejected credit card, feeling the weight of every eye in line behind me. The cashier's expression had shifted from polite professionalism to thinly veiled impatience, her acrylic nails tapping against the counter in a rhythm that matched my racing heartbeat. "Do you have another form of payment, ma'am?" she asked, her voice carrying just far enough for the couple behind me to hear. I saw them exchange a look, that knowing glance people share when witnessing someone else's misfortune, grateful it wasn't happening to them. My throat tightened. "Let me try this one," I whispered, fumbling through my wallet with fingers that didn't seem to belong to me anymore. The second card came back declined, then the third. Each rejection felt like a small death, a public execution of my dignity in aisle 7 of a supermarket that smelled of bleach and rotting produce. I knew what Marcus had done. Of course I knew. The divorce papers had been served 3 days ago, delivered by a man who'd looked everywhere except at my face as I signed for them. But I hadn't expected this swift surgical removal of my ability to survive. Every card in my name, every account we'd shared during our 7-year marriage, all of it gone with a few clicks on his phone, probably executed from the leather chair in his corner office, while his secretary brought him coffee in that pretentious French press he loved so much. "I'm sorry," I managed, my voice barely audible over the static hum of the refrigerated section nearby. I'll put everything back." The shame burned hot and red across my cheeks as I began removing items from the belt. A loaf of bread, a carton of eggs, a small container of yogurt, the bare necessities I'd thought I could afford for another week until I figured out what came next. The cashier sighed heavily, already calling for someone to return the items to their shelves, to erase this embarrassing interlude from her register. I turned to leave, my canvas tote bag hanging empty against my hip, and that's when I saw him. He stood near the entrance, a figure so utterly out of place in this dingy neighborhood grocery that he might as well have materialized from another dimension. The late afternoon sun slanted through the smudged glass doors behind him, creating a halo effect that seemed almost biblical, almost cruel in its irony. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my rent, cut so precisely to his frame that it had to be custom. Even from across the store, I could see the quality, the way the fabric caught the light, the sharp lines of the shoulders, the subtle sheen that spoke of silk blends and Italian craftsmanship. But it wasn't the suit that made my breath catch. It was the way he stood, utterly still, utterly composed, like a panther observing prey. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and strong lines, and his eyes. God. His eyes. Even at this distance, I felt the weight of them, dark and assessing, cataloging everything about me in the span of a heartbeat. 2 men flanked him, both built like brick walls poured into black suits, their hands clasped in front of them in that universal bodyguard stance. One wore an earpiece, the thin wire disappearing into his collar. They weren't looking at the produce displays or the sale signs. They were scanning the store with the systematic precision of men trained to identify threats. And the man in the center, the one who clearly commanded them, was looking directly at me. My pulse kicked up for an entirely different reason than my earlier humiliation. There was something predatory in that gaze, something that made my instincts scream at me to run even as my feet remained rooted to the scuffed linoleum floor. I watched as he said something to the guard on his left without breaking eye contact with me. The guard nodded, spoke into his wrist, and I realized with a start that there were more of them. More men in dark suits positioned throughout the store like chess pieces on a board I hadn't known I was playing on. I should have looked away. Should have hurried past him and out into the fading daylight. Back to my tiny apartment with its peeling paint and broken heater. Back to the ruins of my life that at least made sense in their devastation. But I couldn't. Something about the intensity of his attention held me captive, made me feel simultaneously exposed and seen. Truly seen, maybe for the first time in years. He moved then, a fluid motion that brought him through the entrance and into the store proper. The automatic doors had barely begun to open before he was through them, and I noticed he moved with an economy of motion that suggested careful awareness of every inch of space around him. His guards fell into formation without needing instruction, creating a buffer zone that no other shopper would breach. I forced myself to move, to break whatever spell had momentarily paralyzed me. My legs felt unsteady as I walked toward the exit, angling to pass him with as much distance as the narrow aisle would allow. The scent hit me as I drew closer, expensive cologne, something dark and woody with notes of bergamot and leather. It was the smell of money, of power, of a world so far removed from mine that we might as well have been different species. "Excuse me," I mumbled, keeping my eyes down, trying to make myself small and invisible the way I'd learned to do during the final months with Marcus. If I could just get past him, get outside, get away from those eyes that seemed to strip away every defense I'd carefully constructed. "Wait." The single word stopped me as effectively as a hand on my shoulder. It wasn't loud. In fact, his voice was surprisingly quiet, a low rumble that somehow carried absolute authority. I looked up despite myself, meeting his gaze fully for the first time. Up close, he was devastating. Not handsome in the conventional sense. His features were too sharp, too severe for that, but there was something magnetic about him. Something that drew the eye and held it captive. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, barely visible unless you were close enough to count his eyelashes. His jaw was shadowed with stubble that suggested he'd been awake for more hours than advisable. And those eyes, dark brown, almost black, with gold flecks visible only in direct light, were focused on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. My voice failed me. What could I possibly say to this man? This stranger who radiated danger and power like heat from asphalt in summer? He tilted his head slightly, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. Then his gaze flickered past me, toward the register where my humiliation still hung in the air like smoke. Something changed in his face, a tightening around his eyes, a muscle ticking in his jaw. When he looked back at me, there was something new in his expression. Calculation, maybe. Or decision. "You dropped this," he said, pulling something from the interior pocket of his suit jacket. I blinked, confused. I hadn't dropped anything. I barely had anything to drop. But he was extending his hand toward me, and in it was a credit card. No, not a credit card. The card was black, so matte it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible numbers, no bank logo, just a subtle embossed design in one corner that might have been initials, or might have been a symbol. I'd never seen anything like it. "That's not mine," I said automatically, even as some part of my brain whispered that I should just take it, should accept this impossible gift from this impossible man. "It is now." His voice left no room for argument. He pressed the card into my palm, and his fingers brushed mine, warm, callous despite the expensive suit, sending a jolt of electricity up my arm that I felt in my teeth. "Consider it a loan, until you get back on your feet." "I can't," I started, trying to push the card back toward him, but he'd already stepped away, his guards moving with him like a well-oiled machine. "The pin is your birthday," he said over his shoulder, and my blood turned to ice. How could he possibly know my birthday? I'd never met this man before in my life. I was certain of it. You didn't forget a face like that, a presence like that. But he'd said it with such casual certainty, as if my personal information was just another fact in some file he'd memorized. "Wait," I called out, finally finding my voice. "I don't even know your name. How am I supposed to pay you back?" He paused at the door, the setting sun backlighting him again, turning him into a silhouette edged in gold. When he turned back, there was something that might have been a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Not warm, not friendly, but satisfied, like a cat that had just cornered a mouse and was deciding whether to play with it first. "You'll see me again," he said, and it sounded less like a promise and more like a threat. "Soon." Then he was gone, flowing out into the evening with his guards forming a protective cocoon around him. Through the smudged glass, I watched as they approached a black SUV with tinted windows so dark they had to be illegal. The vehicle was idling at the curb, and I caught a glimpse of another man in the driver's seat, alert and watching the street. The rear guard opened the door, scanned the area one final time, and then they were all inside. The SUV pulled away with the smooth, powerful acceleration of a vehicle that cost more than most people earned in a year. I stood there, frozen in the doorway, the black card burning in my palm like a piece of coal. Around me, the normal sounds of the grocery store filtered back in. The beep of scanners, the murmur of conversations, the rattle of shopping carts. But everything felt different now, tilted somehow, like the world had shifted a few degrees off its axis, and I was the only one who noticed. My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. I pulled it out with my free hand, the one not clutching the mysterious card, and felt my stomach drop at the name on the screen. Marcus. The text was brief, brutal in its efficiency. Hope you're enjoying poverty, Emily. Should have thought about that before you asked for a divorce. You'll come crawling back. They always do. Rage flooded through me, hot and clarifying. He thought he'd broken me, thought he'd stripped me of everything, my dignity, my independence, my ability to survive without him, and he was wrong. I had this card, this impossible gift from an impossible stranger, and whatever came next, whatever price I'd eventually have to pay for it, at least I wouldn't give Marcus the satisfaction of seeing me beg. I walked back to the register on legs that felt steadier than they had in days. The same cashier looked up, her expression cycling through surprise and resignation, but before she could say anything, I placed the black card on the counter. I'd like to try again, I said, and my voice didn't shake at all. She picked up the card, examining it with barely concealed curiosity. When she swiped it, I held my breath, half expecting another rejection, another public humiliation. But the machine beeped almost immediately, a cheerful sound that meant approval, meant success. The cashier's eyes widened slightly as she looked at the screen, and when she handed the card back to me, her entire demeanor had changed. The impatience was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "Will that be all, ma'am?" she asked. And the ma'am sounded different now, genuine. "Yes," I said, taking the card back and sliding it carefully into my wallet. "That will be all." As I walked out of the store with my small bag of groceries, the evening air cool against my flushed cheeks, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a deal with the devil, that somewhere in this city, in some place where men wore $1,000 suits and traveled with armed guards, that stranger was watching me, waiting. And the terrifying part was that I wanted to see him again, too. The apartment felt different when I returned, though nothing about it had physically changed. Same water stain on the ceiling in the shape of South America. Same flickering bulb in the hallway that the landlord kept promising to fix. Same thin walls that let me hear Mrs. Chen's television 3 doors down, the Mandarin dialogue bleeding through at all hours. But I was different, and that made everything else seem altered, like looking at a familiar photograph through a new lens. I set the groceries on the counter, the same items I'd tried to buy before, plus a few extras I'd added in a moment of reckless defiance. Fresh strawberries, real butter instead of margarine, a small piece of salmon that gleamed pink and perfect under the plastic wrap. Small luxuries that had been forbidden during the final months with Marcus, when every dollar I spent was scrutinized, questioned, used as evidence of my inadequacy. The black card sat in my wallet like a live thing, humming with potential energy. I pulled it out, studying it under the harsh kitchen light. There was something inscribed in the corner after all. Initials, I thought, though the font was so stylized I couldn't quite make them out. DS, maybe? Or DC? The material felt unusual, too, heavier than a normal credit card, with a texture that was almost warm to the touch. My phone rang, shattering the quiet. Unknown number. My finger hovered over the decline button. Probably Marcus calling from his office line, ready to gloat some more about how he'd left me destitute. But something made me answer. "Hello?" Silence. Not empty silence, but the weighted kind. The silence of someone listening. I could hear breathing on the other end, slow and measured. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. "Who is this?" I demanded, hating how my voice wavered. A click, then the dial tone. I stood there staring at my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was probably nothing. A wrong number. A telemarketer with a bad connection. But I couldn't shake the image of those dark eyes watching me, assessing me. making decisions about my life without my consent or understanding. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the building settling, every car door slamming on the street below sent my imagination spiraling. I kept seeing him. The stranger with the expensive suit and the dangerous eyes, kept feeling the ghost of his touch when he'd pressed that card into my palm. Kept hearing his voice. You'll see me again. Soon. When morning finally came, gray and drizzling, I dragged myself to the diner where I'd been working shifts since Marcus and I separated. The Sunrise Cafe was anything but sunny, a greasy spoon in a neighborhood that had seen better decades, where the coffee was always burnt, and the regulars always complained about everything while tipping exactly 10%. But it was work, and work was survival. You look like hell, said Rita, the other morning server, as I tied my apron. She was 50-something, all sharp edges and cigarette-raspy voice, but she'd been kind to me in her own brusque way. Man troubles? Isn't it always? I managed a weak smile, grabbing the coffee pot from my section. The morning rush was its usual chaos. Construction workers gulping down eggs and hash browns, nurses coming off night shifts too tired to cook, the occasional lost tourist who'd wandered too far from the guidebook recommendations. I moved through it on autopilot, my body performing tasks while my mind spun in circles. I was refilling coffee for table 6 when the door chimed. I didn't look up immediately. I'd learned not to make eye contact with customers until absolutely necessary. Some of them took eye contact as an invitation, and I was too tired to deflect unwanted attention today. But then the diner went quiet, not all at once, but like a wave rolling through the cramped space. Conversations faltered. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Even Rita, who feared nothing and no one, had gone still behind the counter, her expression unreadable. I turned. He stood in the doorway, and he was even more arresting in daylight than he'd been in the fluorescent gloom of the grocery store. The rain had caught him. Small drops beaded on the shoulders of his black overcoat, diamond bright against the expensive fabric. His hair was swept back, still perfect despite the weather, and those eyes found me immediately, as if he'd known exactly where I'd be standing. The 2 guards from yesterday flanked him, their presence making the small diner feel even more cramped. They didn't belong here any more than he did. These men with their earpieces and their watchful eyes, scanning the room like they expected threats to emerge from behind the cracked vinyl booths. Emily! He said my name like he'd been saying it for years, familiar and possessive. We need to talk. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But where would I go? This was my job, my livelihood, the only thing standing between me and complete destitution. And more than that, I was tired of running, tired of being afraid, tired of men making decisions about my life while I stood by and accepted it. I'm working, I said, proud of how steady my voice came out. If you want to talk, you can wait until my shift ends at 2. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. He wasn't used to being told to wait. That much was clear. Behind him, one of the guards shifted slightly, and I caught the subtle bulge under his jacket that might have been a phone, or might have been something far more dangerous. Very well. He moved to an empty booth in my section, sliding in with that same fluid grace. His guards positioned themselves at the booth behind him, creating a buffer zone that no other customer would dare breach. I'll have coffee while I wait. Black. My hands trembled slightly as I poured, hyper-aware of his eyes tracking my every movement. Up close, I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the shadow of exhaustion that suggested he slept as poorly as I did. There was something devastating about seeing this small evidence of his humanity, this crack in the marble facade. There you go, I said, setting down the cup. Anything else? Your break is in 20 minutes, not a question. A statement of fact. How did he know my schedule? We'll talk then. I wanted to argue, to assert some control over this situation that felt increasingly like a riptide pulling me out to sea. But Rita was watching from behind the counter, her eyes sharp with concern and curiosity. The last thing I needed was to cause a scene that would cost me this job too. The next 20 minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. I felt his gaze on me constantly, tracking me as I moved between tables, refilled drinks, delivered plates of eggs and toast. It should have made me nervous, should have made me clumsy. Instead, I found myself moving with unusual precision, hyper-aware of every gesture, every word, performing for an audience of one. When my break finally came, I untied my apron with fingers that had gone numb. He stood as I approached, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that seemed incongruous coming from a man who radiated barely controlled danger. "There's a car outside," he said. "We'll talk there. More private." "I'm not getting in a car with a stranger," I said flatly, even as my heart raced. "You can say whatever you need to say right here." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm not going to hurt you, Emily. You know my name. You know my birthday. You know where I work." Each statement landed like an accusation. "But I don't know anything about you, not even your name. So forgive me if I'm not rushing to trust you." For a long moment, we stood there in the narrow space between booths, locked in a silent battle of wills. Then something in his expression softened. Not much, just a fraction, but enough that I could see the man beneath the armor. "Dominic," he said finally. "Dominic Salvatore." The name hit me like cold water. I knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name, even if they pretended not to. The Salvatore family had run the South Side for 3 generations, their influence extending into every shadow, every dark corner where legitimate business ended and something else began. Protection rackets, construction contracts, union negotiations that ended with people getting exactly what the Salvatores wanted them to get. "Oh God," I breathed, taking an involuntary step back. "You're..." "Careful." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but the warning in it was clear. Walls have ears, even here. He was right. I could feel the weight of attention from every corner of the diner, people trying not to look while hanging on every word. Rita had her phone out, probably texting someone. This would be all over the neighborhood by nightfall. Emily Carter, the divorced waitress, being courted by Dominic Salvatore himself. "The car," I said, my voice hollow. 5 minutes. His expression didn't change, but I saw satisfaction flash in his eyes. He'd won this round, and we both knew it. The black SUV was parked in the loading zone out front, rain streaming down its darkened windows. One of the guards opened the rear door, and I climbed in before I could change my mind, sliding across leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Dominic settled in beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell that intoxicating scent of expensive cologne, and something darker, more primal. The door closed, sealing us in a cocoon of silence. The rain drummed against the roof, the world outside reduced to blurred shapes and colors through the tinted glass. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. The question that had been burning in my chest since yesterday. "Why give me that card? Why come here? What do you want from me?" He was quiet for a moment, studying me with those impossibly dark eyes. When he spoke, his voice was low, measured, each word carefully chosen. "Your ex-husband," he said. "Marcus Carter. He works at Hightower Investments, correct?" My stomach dropped. What does Marcus have to do with this? Everything. Dominic shifted slightly, angling his body toward mine. 6 months ago, Marcus came to me with a business proposal. He claimed he could move certain assets through his firm, make some money disappear, and reappear cleaner than when it started. He was very convincing, very eager. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, so eager that I didn't notice he was skimming from the top. $2 million, Emily. Your husband stole $2 million from me. The number was so large it didn't seem real. I tried to picture Marcus, weak, vain Marcus with his thinning hair and his mid-level management job, stealing $2 million from the mob. It would have been laughable if Dominic's expression wasn't so deadly serious. "Ex-husband," I corrected automatically. "And I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know anything about this." "I know." He reached out, and I flinched before I could stop myself. His hand paused in midair, then continued more slowly, brushing a strand of hair back from my face with surprising gentleness. "I've had people watching Marcus for weeks, watching his accounts, his movements, his associates, and you. I know you filed for divorce 3 months ago. I know he's been making your life hell ever since. I know he canceled every card in your name the day you were served papers, trying to force you to come back to him. You've been watching me. It should have terrified me, should have sent me scrambling for the door. But instead, I felt something else. A dark thrill, dangerous and addictive. Yes. No apology, no shame. Just honest admission. And what I've seen is a woman who deserves better than what she's gotten. So I'm making you an offer, Emily. What kind of offer? He leaned closer, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his irises, count the thick lashes that any woman would envy. Your ex-husband is going to pay me back every penny he stole, and when he can't, because he can't, he's already spent most of it on his secretary and that ridiculous sports car. I'm going to take everything he has, his job, his pension, his reputation, everything. His hand came to rest on my knee, warm and heavy through my thin work pants. But you, Emily, you're going to be protected. That card I gave you, use it. Buy whatever you need. Live however you want. Consider it. Compensation for being married to a thief and an idiot. And what do you get out of this? I asked, even though part of me already knew the answer. His smile was slow, predatory, beautiful in its honesty. I get to watch Marcus Carter realize that while he was playing small-time games, his wife, ex-wife, was being taken care of by the man he stole from. I get to see the look on his face when he understands that he didn't break you, he freed you, and I get... His thumb traced small circles on my knee, sending electricity shooting up my spine. I get your company, your time, your attention, when I want it, where I want it. That sounds like I'd be trading one cage for another. Perhaps. He didn't deny it, and somehow that made it worse, or better. I couldn't tell anymore. But at least this cage comes with a black card, and no one who tells you you're not good enough. He had no idea how deeply that cut, how precisely he'd identified the wound Marcus had spent years carving into my soul. I wanted to be angry at the manipulation, at the calculated way he was using my pain. But I was too tired, too worn down, too desperate for someone to see me as anything other than disappointing. I need to think about this, I said, reaching for the door handle. His hand caught my wrist, not hard, but firm enough to stop me. Emily, one more thing. He waited until I met his eyes. Marcus is dangerous when he's cornered, and he's about to be very cornered. If he contacts you, if he threatens you, if he so much as looks at you wrong, you call me. He produced a phone from his pocket, a burner by the look of it, and pressed it into my free hand. This phone only has one number in it, mine. Use it. Why do you care if Marcus threatens me? The look he gave me then was pure possession, dark and hungry and absolutely terrifying. Because you're mine to protect now. And I protect what's mine. Before I could process that, before I could argue or accept or do anything at all, he released my wrist, and the guard opened my door. The rain and noise of the street rushed in, breaking the spell of that enclosed space. I stumbled out onto the sidewalk, the burner phone clutched in one hand, my mind reeling. The SUV pulled away smoothly, leaving me standing in the rain, soaked through and shaking. Rita was watching through the diner window, her expression unreadable. I had 3 minutes left of my break. 3 minutes to pull myself together, to shove down the tangle of fear and exhilaration, and dark, dangerous want that Dominic Salvatore had awakened in me. 3 minutes before I had to go back to being just Emily, the waitress with the failed marriage and the empty bank account. But I wasn't just Emily anymore. I had a black card in my wallet and a mob boss's private number in my pocket. And God help me, I wanted to use both. 3 days passed before Marcus made his move. 3 days of looking over my shoulder, jumping at every unexpected sound, clutching that burner phone like a talisman. 3 days of the black card sitting in my wallet, unused except for groceries and rent. I couldn't bring myself to spend Dominic's money frivolously, even though he'd told me to. It felt too much like acceptance, like stepping fully into whatever dark arrangement he was offering. I was closing up my apartment windows against an early evening storm when someone pounded on my door. Not knocked, pounded, with the kind of force that rattled the frame and sent my heart into my throat. "Emily! Open this goddamn door!" Marcus. I'd know that voice anywhere, though I'd never heard it quite like this. Ragged, desperate, teetering on the edge of violence. "Go away," I shouted back. my hand already reaching for the burner phone on the coffee table. "I have nothing to say to you. You've been talking to Salvatore." Another thunderous impact against the door. Mrs. Chen's television went silent next door. She was listening, probably calling the police, or maybe not. People in this neighborhood had learned not to get involved. "You think I don't have eyes? You think I don't know you've been seen with him?" My blood ran cold. So it was true. Marcus had stolen from the mob. And now Dominic was collecting, exactly as he'd promised. "Whatever's happening between you and Dominic Salvatore has nothing to do with me," I said, proud of how steady my voice remained even as my hands shook. "We're divorced, Marcus. My life isn't your business anymore." "You stupid bitch." His voice cracked on the words. "You don't understand what you've done. He's going to kill me. Do you understand that? He's going to fucking kill me, and it's your fault." "My fault?" Rage flooded through me, hot and clarifying. I crossed to the door, leaving the chain engaged, but getting close enough that he could hear every word. "You're the one who stole from him. You're the one who made whatever mess you're in. I didn't even know about it until 3 days ago. He only came after me because of you." Marcus was crying now. I could hear it in his voice, the wet, ugly sounds of a man who'd run out of options. "He's obsessed with you, can't you see that? This isn't about the money anymore. It's about taking everything I have, including you." Something in his words rang true, resonating with the possessive way Dominic had looked at me, the careful attention he'd paid to every detail of my life, but it didn't change the fundamental fact. Marcus had made his choices, and I refused to pay for them anymore. "Go home, Marcus," I said, exhaustion replacing anger. "Or go to the police. Go anywhere but here." "The police?" He laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You really are naive. You think the cops can protect me from Dominic Salvatore? You think anyone can?" A thud. He'd pressed against the door, and I could picture him there, forehead against the wood, defeat written in every line of his body. "He came to my office today, Emily. Walked right in with his lawyers and his accountants and showed me exactly how much I owe him. Every penny, down to the interest. I don't have it. I could work for 50 years and never have it." "Then you shouldn't have stolen it," I said flatly. "I did it for us." The desperation in his voice was painful to hear. "I did it so we could have a better life. So I could give you the things you wanted. I never wanted anything but honesty and respect." I cut him off. "And you couldn't give me either, so you don't get to blame this on me. You don't get to make me responsible for your choices." Silence. Long enough that I thought he might have left. "Then he'll destroy you too, Emily. Men like Dominic Salvatore don't care about people like us. We're just toys to them. And when he's done playing, he'll throw you away like everything else." The words hit closer to home than I wanted to admit. Wasn't that exactly what I feared? That this was all just a game to Dominic, elaborate revenge dressed up as protection. "Goodbye, Marcus," I said softly, stepping away from the door. "Emily, please." I walked to the bedroom and closed the door, shutting out his voice, his pleading, his attempt to drag me down into the consequences of his own actions. Let him stand out there all night if he wanted. Let him pound until his fists bled. I was done being his emotional support, his safety net, his excuse. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. The burner phone. "Is he still outside your building?" Dominic's text was brief, efficient. My heart rate spiked. How did he know? I moved to the window, peering down at the street through a gap in the curtains. The black SUV was parked across the street, barely visible through the rain. Of course. He'd had people watching me, protecting me, he'd probably say. "He left 10 minutes ago," I typed back. "How long have your people been out there? Since the moment I left you at the diner." "Did you think I'd leave you unprotected when I knew Marcus would come?" I didn't know whether to be touched or terrified by his thoroughness. Probably both. "You can call them off. I'm fine." "No. Just that. No explanation, no room for negotiation. I'm coming up." Before I could respond, before I could tell him absolutely not, there was a knock on my door. Softer than Marcus's assault, but no less commanding. I looked through the peephole and there he was. Dominic Salvatore, standing in my shabby hallway like a king slumming in the commoners' quarters. His suit was spotted with rain, his hair slightly disheveled from the wind. One guard stood at the stairs, another at the far end of the hall. He'd brought his entire security apparatus into my world, making no attempt to be subtle about it. I opened the door because what else could I do? He'd made it clear that my preferences were noted, but not binding. "You shouldn't be here," I said, not moving aside to let him in. "Your ex-husband just threatened you." He stepped forward, and I had two choices: hold my ground and have him press against me, or step back. I stepped back. He followed me in, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. Where I should be is exactly here. He dominated the small space immediately, making my already tiny apartment feel like a shoebox. His eyes swept over everything: the thrift store furniture, the water-stained ceiling, the crack in the wall I'd covered with a poster. I saw him catalog it all, saw the muscle tick in his jaw. "You shouldn't be living like this," he said quietly. "It's what I can afford." I crossed my arms, defensive. "Not everyone has unlimited resources." "You do now." He pulled an envelope from his jacket and set it on my counter. "Lease agreement for an apartment in the Meridian building. Downtown. Security, parking, the works. I had my people draw up the papers today. You can move in this weekend." I stared at the envelope like it might bite me. "I'm not moving into an apartment you're paying for." "Why not?" "Because I'm not your kept woman or whatever this is." The words burst out of me, fueled by 3 days of tension and confusion. "You can't just reorganize my entire life because you've decided to use me as a weapon against my ex-husband. Is that what you think this is?" He moved closer, and I retreated until my back hit the wall. He didn't touch me, but he might as well have. I could feel the heat of him, the intensity of his focus. "You think I'm going to all this trouble just to make Marcus suffer, aren't you?" His hand came up, bracing against the wall beside my head. Not trapping me, but close enough. "Marcus suffering is a pleasant side effect. But he's irrelevant, Emily. He was irrelevant the moment I saw you standing in that grocery store, trying so hard to hold yourself together while he tried to break you from afar." His other hand rose, fingers gentle as they traced the curve of my jaw. "I saw you, and I knew. You were never his. You were always meant to be mine." The words should have terrified me, should have sent every alarm bell screaming. But instead, heat pooled low in my belly, dangerous and addictive. "You don't even know me," I whispered. "I know you work 2 jobs to afford this place. I know you send money to your sister every month even though you can barely feed yourself. I know you read mystery novels before bed, and you take your coffee with too much cream and not enough sugar. I know you haven't bought yourself new clothes in 8 months because you needed that money for other things." His thumb brushed over my lower lip, and my breath caught. "I know that you're stronger than Marcus ever deserved, braver than you give yourself credit for. And so goddamn beautiful it hurts to look at you. Dominic." I didn't know if I was protesting or pleading. "I want to give you everything," he continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Not because of Marcus, not because of some game, because you deserve it, because I can. Because the thought of you struggling while I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes makes me want to burn the world down. That's not normal," I managed, even as my body betrayed me, leaning into his touch. "I never claimed to be normal." His smile was sharp, dangerous. "I'm a monster, Emily. I've done terrible things. I'll do more terrible things. But with you? You bring out something I thought I'd killed a long time ago. Something almost decent." "Almost?" Despite everything, a laugh bubbled out of me. "I'm still going to destroy your ex-husband. I'm still going to take everything he has and leave him with nothing. I'm still going to make him watch while I give you the life he couldn't." His fingers threaded through my hair, gentle despite the darkness in his words. "But I'll do it because he deserves it, not because I need to. The difference matters." "Does it?" I asked, searching his face for truth. Instead of answering, he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was claiming, possessive. A kiss that demanded surrender. His hand fisted in my hair, angling my head exactly where he wanted it, and I melted against him despite every logical reason not to. He tasted like expensive whiskey and danger, and I couldn't get enough. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard, His eyes had gone almost black, pupils blown wide with want. "That's why it matters," he said roughly. "Because this isn't strategy, this is real." A phone buzzed, his, not mine. He answered without looking away from me, his hand still tangled in my hair. "What?" A pause. "When?" Another pause, and his expression hardened into something truly frightening. "Don't let him leave. I'm on my way." He ended the call, and I saw the shift in him, from the man who'd just kissed me like I was oxygen, to the man who ran a criminal empire. "What's wrong?" I asked. Marcus tried to run, packed a bag, and headed for the airport. He stepped back, already moving toward the door. My people intercepted him. "I need to go have a conversation about honor and debts." Fear spiked through me. "You said you wouldn't kill him." He paused at the door, looking back at me. "I said I would take everything he has. I keep my promises, Emily. All of them." His gaze softened fractionally. "Pack what you need for tonight. My driver will take you to the Meridian." "You're not staying here anymore. It's not safe now that Marcus knows where you live." "I haven't agreed to—" "I don't care." The steel in his voice left no room for argument. "You can fight me on this tomorrow. Tonight, you're going somewhere I can keep you safe. Non-negotiable." He was gone before I could protest further, his guards following like shadows. I stood in my suddenly empty apartment, fingers pressed to my lips where I could still feel the ghost of his kiss. Everything was happening too fast. I was being swept along in a current too strong to fight, pulled deeper into Dominic's world with every passing hour. The smart thing would be to run, to pack a bag and disappear. Start over somewhere he couldn't find me, but I didn't want to run. God help me. I wanted to stay. Wanted to see where this dangerous thing between us led. Wanted to feel that intensity focused on me again. That absolute certainty that I mattered. 20 minutes later, I was in the back of a different black SUV. A small suitcase beside me, watching my building disappear in the rearview mirror. The driver didn't speak, didn't even look at me. Just drove through the rain-slicked streets toward a future I couldn't predict and probably shouldn't want. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You'll regret choosing him over me. You both will. Marcus." Making threats he couldn't back up, trying to regain some sense of control. I deleted the message and looked out at the city lights blurring past. Somewhere out there, Dominic was having his conversation with my ex-husband. Somewhere out there, my old life was ending and a new one was beginning. And the most terrifying part was how little I mourned what I was leaving behind. The Meridian building rose 40 stories into the Seattle skyline, all glass and steel and understated luxury that screamed old money. The lobby alone was larger than my entire apartment had been, with marble floors that echoed with every footstep and a chandelier that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. The doorman greeted the driver by name, didn't even blink at my single battered suitcase. The apartment was on the 32nd floor, corner unit. Floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city like a glittering circuit board. Hardwood floors, designer furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine, a kitchen with appliances I didn't know how to use. It was beautiful and cold and absolutely terrifying. "Mr. Salvatore had the refrigerator stocked," said the woman who'd met me at the elevator. Elena, Dominic's assistant, impeccably dressed and utterly professional. "Security is on call 24 hours. If you need anything at all, there's a number programmed into the house phone. Just press 1. "Thank you," I managed, feeling completely out of my depth. She smiled, and for the first time, something warm entered her expression. "He means well, you know, even when it doesn't seem like it. He's just not used to caring about people." Then she was gone, and I was alone in an apartment that cost more per month than I used to make in a year. I walked through the space in a daze, opening cabinets filled with expensive dishes, finding closets full of clothes in exactly my size. Of course, Dominic knew my measurements. He seemed to know everything else. My phone rang. The burner. I answered without thinking. "Do you like it?" His voice was rough, tired in a way I hadn't heard before. "It's too much," I said honestly. "All of this is too much. You'll get used to it." A pause. "Are you safe? Comfortable?" "Yes." I sank onto the plush sofa, my reflection staring back at me from the darkened windows. Where are you? Warehouse on the south side, finishing up some business. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. I didn't want to know the details of what finishing up meant when it came to Marcus. Is he alive? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Silence. Then, yes, bruised, terrified, but alive. I told you I wouldn't kill him. Relief flooded through me, surprising in its intensity. I didn't love Marcus anymore. Maybe I never had. Not really. But I didn't want his blood on my hands, even indirectly. What happens to him now? He works for me. Every penny he earns goes toward his debt. It'll take him years, maybe decades, but he'll pay back every cent. Dominic's voice held dark satisfaction. And every day, he'll know that while he's scraping by, his ex-wife is living in luxury because I chose to take care of her. It's a special kind of torture. You really are a monster, I said. But there was no heat in it. I warned you. A sound in the background. Voices. Movement. I need to go. Don't wait up for me. Wait. I stood, pacing to the windows. Are you coming here? Tonight? Another pause. Would you like me to? The honest answer was yes. The smart answer was no. I gave him the honest one. Yes. I felt his satisfaction through the phone line. Then I'll be there in an hour. There's wine in the cabinet above the sink. Pour yourself a glass. Relax. He hung up before I could change my mind. I found the wine, a red that probably cost more than my security deposit had been, and poured a generous glass. The alcohol helped, dulling the sharp edges of anxiety. I explored the apartment more thoroughly, finding a bathroom with a tub large enough to swim in, a bedroom with a bed that could sleep 4, and a walk-in closet filled with clothes that still had tags attached. Everything in my size. Everything perfectly curated to my style, or what my style would be if I could afford it. Soft fabrics, muted colors, nothing flashy or revealing. He'd been paying attention to more than just my measurements. I showered, using products that smelled like lavender and cost more than I wanted to think about. Found a silk robe hanging on the bathroom door, black and elegant, and definitely not something I would have bought myself. Slipped it on because my pajamas were in my suitcase, and I couldn't bring myself to dig them out, to remind myself of my old life. Dominic arrived exactly an hour later. I heard the front door open, heard his voice in the hallway speaking to someone. Probably the security guard, then footsteps. And he was there, filling the doorway of the living room with his presence. He looked exhausted. The expensive suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes. But when he saw me standing by the windows in his robe, something ignited in his gaze. Emily. My name was a prayer and a curse. Hi, I said stupidly, clutching my wine glass like a shield. He crossed to me in 3 long strides, and then his hands were framing my face, tilting it up to meet his eyes. Are you real? He asked, his voice rough. Tell me I didn't imagine you. Tell me you're actually here. I'm here. I set down the wine glass before I dropped it. What happened tonight? What did you do? Nothing you need to worry about. His thumb traced my cheekbone, gentle despite the violence I knew those hands were capable of. Marcus is handled. He won't bother you again. That's not what I asked. His smile was sharp, tired. I know. But it's all the answer you're getting. He leaned down, pressing his forehead to mine. I'm too tired to be charming tonight, Emily. Too tired to pretend I'm anything other than a selfish bastard who wants to take you to bed and forget about the rest of the world for a few hours. My breath caught. Then don't pretend. Something broke in his expression. He kissed me hard, demanding, walking me backward until my legs hit the sofa. We went down together, his weight pressing me into the cushions, his hands everywhere, in my hair, on my waist, sliding beneath the silk of the robe to find bare skin. I should have stopped him, should have demanded answers, set boundaries, protected the last fragments of my independence. Instead, I arched into his touch, desperate for the oblivion he offered, for the way he made me feel like I mattered, like I was something precious worth protecting. Tell me to stop, he growled against my throat, teeth grazing my pulse point. Tell me this is too fast, too much. Tell me you need time. Don't stop. I breathed, and felt his groan vibrate through both of us. What happened next was inevitable. Had been inevitable since the moment he'd handed me that black card, maybe even before that. We came together in a tangle of desperate need and careful hands, and for a few perfect hours, nothing else existed except the two of us and the chemistry that burned between us. Afterward, we lay tangled together on the sofa, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my shoulder. The city glittered beyond the windows, oblivious to the tectonic shift happening in this apartment. "I need to tell you something," Dominic said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. I tensed, preparing for the blow. "What?" Marcus wasn't the first person to steal from me. He wasn't even the most significant. His hand kept moving, soothing. But he was the first one stupid enough to flaunt it, to use my money to divorce his wife and parade around with his secretary like he was invincible. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to understand. I didn't choose you to hurt him. I chose you despite him." He shifted so he could look at me, his expression serious. "The first time I saw you, he wasn't even in the picture yet. I was doing reconnaissance, figuring out who Marcus was, where he lived, what mattered to him. I saw you at that diner, running yourself ragged for tips that barely covered your bills, and I thought..." He paused, something vulnerable crossing his face. "I thought you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Not because of how you looked, though you're stunning, but because of your strength, your refusal to break even when everything was breaking you. You're saying this wasn't about revenge?" I asked, wanting desperately to believe him. "The revenge is a bonus." His smile was crooked, almost boyish. "The truth is, I fell for you before I ever spoke to you. And once I knew what Marcus was doing to you, how he was trying to destroy you just for daring to leave him, I couldn't walk away. Wouldn't. So you inserted yourself into my life, made yourself indispensable, and now I'm here, in your apartment, in your bed, exactly where you wanted me. I wasn't accusing, just stating facts." "Yes." He didn't deny it, didn't try to pretty it up. "I manipulated the situation to my advantage. I used Marcus's crimes as an excuse to get close to you. I played on your vulnerability and your pride, and your desperate need to prove you could survive without him." His hand cupped my cheek, forcing me to meet his eyes. "But everything I feel for you is real, Emily. The protection, the possessiveness, the need, it's all real. And if that makes me a monster, then I'm a monster. But I'm your monster. I should have been angry, should have felt used, manipulated, trapped. Instead, I felt safe, chosen, wanted with an intensity that was probably unhealthy, but felt like coming home after a lifetime of being lost. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you decide." He sat up, pulling me with him, keeping me close. "You can walk away. I'll set you up in a different apartment, give you enough money to start over anywhere you want, or you can stay. Accept what I'm offering, protection, security, and whatever this is between us. But understand that if you stay, I won't share. I won't play nice with other men who look at you. I won't be reasonable or rational when it comes to your safety." His jaw clenched. "I'll be exactly what I am, possessive, controlling, and probably more trouble than I'm worth." "That's not much of a sales pitch," I said, but my hand was already reaching for his, fingers intertwining. "I'm not trying to sell you on anything. I'm being honest." He brought my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles. "I want you to stay because you choose it, not because you feel trapped." I thought about my old apartment with its water stains and broken heater. Thought about Marcus and his cruelty disguised as love. Thought about the years I'd spent making myself smaller, quieter, less, trying to fit into a box that was never meant for me. Then I thought about the way Dominic looked at me, like I was something rare and precious. The way he'd noticed details about my life that Marcus never had. The way he made me feel powerful, even in my vulnerability. "I'll stay," I said. "But I have conditions." Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Name them." "I keep working at the diner. I'm not becoming some kept woman with nothing to do but wait for you to have time for me." "Agreed." "I want honesty. If you're going to do something that affects my life, I want to know about it. No more surprises." "Within reason," he hedged. "Some things are dangerous for you to know." I narrowed my eyes, but nodded. It was more than I'd expected. And I want a key to this place. Not just permission to stay, but actual ownership of my space here. He smiled, reaching into his pocket to pull out a key on a simple ring. Already had it made. Of course he did. Presumptuous bastard. I took the key, weighing it in my palm. It was heavy, solid, real. A symbol of something I didn't quite understand yet, but was willing to explore. Anything else? He asked. Yeah. I met his eyes, channeling every ounce of strength I had left. If you ever try to control me the way Marcus did, if you ever make me feel small or worthless or trapped, I walk. No discussion, no second chances. I walk. His expression went deadly serious. I swear on everything I have, Emily. I will never make you feel the way he did. You're not a possession to control. You're a queen to worship. He pulled me close, his arms banding around me like steel. And I will burn down anyone who tries to take you from me, including myself, if it comes to that. It was dramatic, probably over the top, definitely unhealthy by normal relationship standards. But we weren't normal. And this wasn't a normal relationship. This was something darker, more intense, forged in manipulation and desperation, and a need that bordered on obsession, and God help me, I wanted it. Okay, I whispered against his chest. Okay. We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other as the city sparkled below us. Somewhere out there, Marcus was learning what it meant to cross Dominic Salvatore. Somewhere out there, my old life was becoming a memory, fading like a photograph left too long in the sun. But here, in this apartment that still didn't quite feel like mine, in the arms of a man who was equal parts dangerous and devoted, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt like myself again. 6 months later, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror in the Meridian apartment, staring at my reflection like it belonged to a stranger. The woman looking back at me wore a dress that cost more than my old monthly rent. Midnight blue silk that draped across my body like water, elegant without being revealing. My hair was styled in soft waves, my makeup professionally done by someone Dominic had sent over that morning. I looked like I belonged in his world now. Sometimes I wondered if that was a good thing. You look beautiful. Dominic's voice came from the doorway, and I met his eyes in the mirror. He wore a tuxedo like he'd been born in one, all sharp lines and devastating elegance. 6 months, and he still made my breath catch. I looked terrified, I corrected, smoothing my hands over the dress for the 100th time. Remind me again why I agreed to this. Because I asked nicely. He crossed to me, his hands settling on my waist, warm and possessive. And because you're done hiding, you're mine, and I want the whole world to know it. Tonight was the annual Salvatore Foundation Charity Gala, the one night a year when Dominic's family put on their most respectable faces and pretended they made their money through entirely legal means. Politicians would be there, business leaders, people who mattered in Seattle's social hierarchy. And I would be on Dominic's arm, introduced as his partner, his girlfriend, his future. The thought made my stomach churn with anxiety. What if they hate me? I asked, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at me for weeks. Then they're idiots. He pressed a kiss to my temple, his stubble scraping against my skin in a way that always made me shiver. But they won't. You're brilliant and beautiful and stronger than any of those society vultures could ever hope to be. I leaned back into his embrace, drawing strength from his certainty. 6 months with Dominic had changed me in ways I was still discovering. I'd kept my job at the diner for 3 months before the owner had sold the place to a developer, the same developer who happened to owe Dominic a favor. I'd been furious when I found out, convinced he'd orchestrated it to control me. We'd had our first real fight, screaming at each other until the neighbors complained. He'd sworn he hadn't arranged it, and I'd chosen to believe him, mostly because Elena had confirmed the sale had been in the works for years, and even Dominic couldn't manipulate everything. Now I worked at the Salvatore Foundation itself, managing their literacy programs. It was meaningful work I was good at, and I'd earned the position based on merit. Dominic had made sure the hiring committee didn't know about our relationship until after I'd been selected. It mattered to him that I succeed on my own terms, and that mattered to me more than I could express. Your brother still hates me, I pointed out, thinking of Marco Salvatore and his cold assessment the first time we'd met. Dominic's younger brother didn't trust easily, and he definitely didn't trust me. Marco hates everyone. It's his defining personality trait. Dominic turned me in his arms, his expression serious, but he'll come around. He sees how happy you make me, even if he doesn't understand it. Happy. Was that what we were? Sometimes I thought so, in the quiet moments when we cooked dinner together, when he read while I worked on my laptop, when we made love like the world was ending and we were each other's salvation. But happiness felt too simple a word for what we had. This was intensity, obsession, a connection so deep it sometimes felt like I couldn't tell where I ended and he began. We should go, I said, before my nerves could convince me to fake food poisoning. Don't want to be late to your own event. The gala was being held at the Fairmont Olympic, in a ballroom that dripped with crystal and gold. Dominic's hand never left the small of my back as we navigated through the crowd, and I felt the weight of every stare, every whispered conversation that stopped when we passed. I knew what they were thinking. Who is she? Where did she come from? What's her angle? Let them wonder. I lifted my chin and smiled like I belonged there, channeling every ounce of fake confidence I possessed. Dominic! A woman in her 60s approached, dripping in diamonds. So wonderful to see you, and who is this lovely creature? Margaret. This is Emily Carter. Emily. Margaret Thornton. She's on the foundation board. We exchanged pleasantries, Margaret's sharp eyes cataloging everything about me, but she was kind, warmer than I'd expected, and by the time she moved on, some of my anxiety had eased. The night progressed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Dominic was never more than a few feet away, his presence a constant comfort. I watched him work the room, charming politicians, flattering donors, all while maintaining that edge of danger that made him so compelling. This was his world, and he commanded it effortlessly. I was talking to a city councilwoman about literacy rates when I felt Dominic's hand tighten on my waist. I glanced up to find his expression had gone cold, his entire body tense. Following his gaze, I saw Marcus. He stood near the bar, looking significantly worse than the last time I'd seen him 6 months ago. His suit was off the rack, his hair thinning more noticeably, dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. He was staring at us with an expression of pure hatred. "Excuse us," Dominic said smoothly to the councilwoman, already steering me away. "What is he doing here?" I asked, my voice low. "Working." Dominic's jaw was tight. "I told you he's paying back his debt. Part of that is working events like this, serving drinks, clearing tables. I want him to see what he gave up." It was cruel. Deliberately, carefully cruel. And I should have objected, should have asked Dominic to show mercy. But I looked at Marcus, at the man who'd tried to destroy me out of spite, who'd canceled my cards and left me humiliated in that grocery store, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Good," I said quietly. Dominic's surprised glance turned into something heated, possessive. "You never cease to amaze me." We didn't speak to Marcus, didn't even acknowledge him beyond that first glance. But I felt his eyes on us all night, watching as Dominic introduced me to everyone who mattered, as we danced together while the orchestra played, as he kissed me in front of Seattle's elite like he didn't care who saw. It should have felt like revenge, should have felt hollow. Instead, it felt like freedom. Near midnight, Dominic pulled me onto the balcony overlooking the city. The November air was cold, and he immediately shrugged out of his jacket to drape it over my shoulders. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. My heart stuttered. "Dominic, it's not what you think." But his smile suggested otherwise. He pulled out a small box, and my breath stopped entirely. Inside was a key, not a ring. A key, platinum and beautiful, on a chain delicate enough to wear as a necklace. "I had this made from the key to the Meridian apartment," he explained, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. "The apartment is yours, Emily, fully yours. I had the deed transferred into your name. Whatever happens between us, you'll always have that security." Tears burned in my eyes. 6 months ago, I'd had nothing. Now I had an apartment, a career, a man who looked at me like I hung the stars. It was overwhelming, terrifying, perfect. Why? I whispered. Because you need to know you're choosing this, choosing me, not because you're trapped, but because you want to. He took the necklace from the box, fastening it around my throat with gentle hands. I love you, Emily. I think I've loved you since I saw you standing in that grocery store, refusing to break even when the world was doing its best to shatter you. And I need you to know that you're free to leave whenever you want. I won't stop you, won't manipulate you. You're not my prisoner. You're my choice, and I want to be yours. You love me, I repeated, testing the words. Desperately, obsessively, probably unhealthily. His smile was crooked, vulnerable. But yes, I love you. I touched the key at my throat, feeling the weight of it, the symbolism, freedom and commitment all at once, the choice to stay not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I love you too, I said, and watched his expression transform. You're possessive and controlling, and you manipulate situations to get what you want. You're probably going to drive me crazy with your overprotectiveness and your need to control everything around me. But, he prompted, hope and wariness warring in his eyes. But you also make me feel safe. You make me feel seen. You've given me back pieces of myself I thought I'd lost forever. I stepped closer, my hands sliding up his chest to link behind his neck. You're my monster, Dominic, and I wouldn't have it any other way. He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of promise. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Marry me, he said. I laughed, breathless. You said the key wasn't a ring. It's not. The ring comes later when I can do this properly. But I need to know, Emily, is this forever? Are you forever? I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. Broken, desperate, invisible. Then I thought about who I was now. Strong, secure, seen. Dominic hadn't rescued me. He'd given me the tools to rescue myself. Then stood beside me while I rebuilt. Yes, I said, I'm forever. The smile that broke across his face was pure joy, unguarded and beautiful. He picked me up and spun me around, and I laughed, really laughed, the sound echoing across the balcony. Inside, the party continued. Somewhere in that ballroom, Marcus was cleaning up after people who'd surpassed him in every way. Somewhere in the city, my old life existed as nothing more than a cautionary tale. But out here, in Dominic's arms, I was exactly where I belonged. Take me home, I whispered against his mouth. Always, he promised. 3 months later, I stood in a private chapel wearing white lace and holding a bouquet of peonies. Dominic waited at the altar in another perfect tuxedo, his eyes never leaving mine as I walked down the aisle. Marco stood beside him as best man, his expression slightly less hostile than usual. Progress, Dominic had called it. Elena was my maid of honor, the only real friend I'd made in Dominic's world. She squeezed my hand before I joined Dominic at the altar. The ceremony was small, intimate, just family and close associates, the kind of wedding I'd always wanted, nothing like the spectacle Marcus had insisted on. When Dominic slid the ring onto my finger, platinum with a single perfect diamond, I felt the last piece of my old life fall away. I promise to protect you, he said. His vows simple and honest, to cherish you, to never make you feel less than the queen you are, and to spend every day proving that you made the right choice. I promise to stand beside you, I replied, my voice steady despite my tears. To call you on your bullshit when you're being too controlling. To love you even when you're being impossible. And to remind you that you're not a monster. You're just a man who loves fiercely and protects what's his. When the priest pronounced us husband and wife, Dominic kissed me like we were the only 2 people in the world. And maybe, in all the ways that mattered, we were. The reception was at the Meridian apartment. My apartment, I still had to remind myself. Small gathering, expensive champagne, laughter and music, filling the space that had once felt too big and cold. Now it felt like home. Late in the evening, I found Dominic on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. I joined him, his arm immediately coming around my waist. Happy? He asked, deliriously. I leaned into him, content. You? More than I have any right to be. He pressed a kiss to my temple. Thank you, Emily. For what? For choosing me. For seeing past the monster to the man underneath. For being brave enough to build a life with someone like me. I turned in his arms, framing his face with my hands. Thank you for seeing me. For choosing me when I had nothing to offer. For giving me the space to become who I was always meant to be. You always had everything to offer. He corrected. I just gave you the opportunity to see it yourself. We stood there as the party continued inside, as the city sprawled below us, as our future stretched out bright and terrifying and absolutely perfect. 6 months ago, I'd been standing in a grocery store, humiliated and broke, my ex-husband trying to destroy me from afar. Now I wore a wedding ring and owned my own apartment and had a career I loved. Now I had a husband who looked at me like I was his entire world, possessive and protective and utterly devoted. The black card still lived in my wallet, a reminder of how this all started, but I rarely used it anymore. I had my own money now, my own security. Dominic had given me the tools, but I'd built the life. Ready to go inside? Dominic asked. Our guests will miss us. 1 more minute, I said, soaking in this moment. I want to remember this, how it feels to be completely, perfectly happy. He held me closer, and I felt his smile against my hair. We have a lifetime of moments like this ahead of us, Mrs. Salvatore. Mrs. Salvatore. It still felt strange on my tongue, like wearing borrowed shoes. But I'd grow into it, the same way I'd grown into everything else about this new life. I love you, I said, the words coming easier now. I love you, he replied. Always. We went back inside together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Because that's what we were now. A team, a partnership, a force to be reckoned with. Marcus had tried to break me. Instead, he'd freed me to find something real. And in the end, that was the sweetest revenge of all.